Hi, Basket Case here. I am going to demonstrate how to make a sun catcher with a geode slice. This has been glued onto clear vinyl so that when you hang it in the window, the light shines through. I drilled the holes. You can also just push a needle through to make your holes. I recommend marking where you want them so you have even spaces. I took a marker and circled them a little so I could see them. I did use Gorilla Clear Grip to glue that vinyl on. When I make you could also turn this into a basket. When I make a pine needle basket, I start from the back and I come to the front. This is waxed leather thread. I get it on Amazon, and I'm using very bright orange so that you can see the contrast. I'm using natural light because the ring light really glared off this glass. I'm going to leave about a 4 to 6 inch tail. I'm going to make 2 loop stitches to the left because then it allows me to put the pine needles in and start the process of a sun catcher or a basket. I want to make sure that when I go around to the next stitch, I'm pinning that tail under the stitch or inside the loop. I'm going to go to the left again to the next hole. Make my second loop. This is what I call the bunny ears. It's 2 loops, and they're about 1 inch to 1.5 inches tall. Then I'm going to take anywhere from 5 to 8 longleaf pine needles. I tap them to get them the same length on the cut end. Put the cut end through those loops, having the cut end stick out 1.5 to 2 inches on the right side. Now, I want to tighten these loops. When you're working with this vinyl, you want to make sure that you're pulling to tighten the loops snug, not yanking. Pull across the top of the geode slice towards your belly. And I want to, see how that moved? I want to hold down the needles, pin down that tail underneath there. This is my working thread or my sewing thread. And I want to adjust the needles to sit on top of this clear ridge of vinyl. They will try to sneak behind there, and you don't want that. You want them on top of that ridge. Now you see I've got this stitch snug down. I can pull my tail again over here gently. I don't want to pull up or out because you could rip the hole. If you do end up breaking one of your holes, you can use your needle and go next to it and just poke a new one. Now that I have my first 2 stitches, I want to make sure that I keep always tension on my sewing thread. And while I'm pinning this tail on, I want to keep snugging that. It's being held underneath there by those first 2 stitches, and I want to continue to stitch around that tail. First, I stitch over the top and get my thread out of the way there. Then I go into the next hole, and I'm making sure that I have that tail, underneath those stitches. Lay it down flat, snug gently, pulling across the top of the geode toward your belly. That stitch is nice and snug. Then I can take this tail and just keep re-snugging it. And I'm going to make sure that these pine needles are sitting on this ledge of the vinyl. I'm going to wrap around first, and then see, now I can pin that thread down in the back while I use my other hand to put the needle through. If you let loose of your tension on your thread, your stitches will loosen up and your basket or your sun catcher will be misshapen and your stitches will not be even. I'm going to do one more stitch to the left, and then I'm going to start adding pine needles. First I wrap it around, pin it down in the back, go into that next hole. Then I lay this flat and I'm pushing everything into the shape that I want. I want the base especially to be nice and flat. If it's a basket, you want a flat base so you don't have a wobbly basket. Now I want to show you, see how this tail is trying to sneak up here? I have this little pick and I can just move it down where I want it to be and then snug it down there. Now I'm going to start adding pine needles. Generally, I start with, as I said, 5 to 8 with a narrow row, and I build it up so that when I get to the second row, it's built up and it can come over this and not have an awkward lump. When we get over here, I'll show you how to trim these and put the next row on top. I'm going to get these pine needles sitting on that ledge, wrap this around. I'm holding it snug. I've got it pinned down in the back, and I'm going to take a pine needle. These longleaf pine needles have 3 legs on each little piece, and when you cut them, some of them are thinner or flatter than others, and some are kind of chunky. When I'm doing a thin row like this in the beginning, I try and find a thinner one. Hold it close to the edge, about 1/2 inch. Holding it back here and trying to get it in doesn't really give you the strength or the aim that you need, and they break. If they break, which they do, set it aside and trim the broken part off and continue using the rest of the needle. I spread these needles apart and I slide that in there. See, I've got it close to the end. Then I can go on to the back. Next stitch to the left. I've already got it wrapped around so that thread's not getting in the way too much. See how it tries to tangle? Okay, I've got that needle in there. Get these needles up on that ledge, snug that down. I do add a pine needle about every other stitch in the first few rows. I've wrapped it over the top to the back. I'm still pinning that tail down, and it's become very stable back there, so it's not going to loosen up on me. Okay. Hold it flat, pull it across the top of the geode toward your belly, and this vinyl is trying to fold up. You want to get those needles up on top of that ledge. Wrap it around again, and you can see that this is in between it, but your next row will be there to cover that. Now I'm going to add another pine needle. Take the cut end, about 1/2 inch from that cut end, split these open, and put your needle in there. And as soon as you feel it catch, it's time to stitch it. I'm going to put my stitch into the next hole to the left. Oh, I think I missed one. I'm going to take this back out. I passed one up. Yes, I did. It's right there. Okay. Next one to the left. That's why I put those little black circles around it to make it a little easier to see. Now, I'm going to put a clip on here to hold my stitches. Always clip your last stitch so it doesn't cut loose. And I've got that sewing thread pinned down. And I'm going to continue to stitch around and add a pine needle about every other stitch. When I get over here, I'll come back and I'll show you how to trim these and put that next row on top of those and do row 2. Okay, see ya.